Gracious God, we give you thanks for the gift of community. What a rare and precious gift it is to find a place where we can be true to ourselves, to be honest about our warts and all, and yet to find that we are loved. Help us at Christchurch to continue to be on the quest to be a spiritual home that embraces and gives life to all people, so that we can know the most important thing of all, that we are loved by you, O God. Amen. Amen. Well, good morning, and welcome to the Faith Forum and to Christ Church, where we're taking a leap of faith to be a community of Christ that shares with people the love and grace and mercy of Christ. What greater gift can we offer people? Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody's story is sacred. But oftentimes we look into our lives and we don't see that which is holy and good. And we don't tell our stories. We don't open our lives to other people. And as a result of that, our lives are diminished. What Glennon has done is she has done the most bold thing of all, which is to tell her story to thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. And in doing so, she has given people permission to tell their story. Please join me in welcoming to Christ Church Glennon, the author of Momastery and of the new book, Carry On Warrior, Thoughts on a Life Unarmed. I want to give everybody a chance to get to know you. Tell us how this journey began for you, of telling your story and of the story of God's love.
Well, I always think back on when this whole journey started to one day when I was on the playground with my 3 little ones. I think I had 3 then. I might have only had 2. It definitely felt like 3. And I was with a friend named Tess, and I knew that she was having some serious struggles in her marriage and her family because of some things I had heard and seen. But we had spent a lot of time together at church and in play dates and never talked about it because we were too busy talking about more important things like soccer practice and countertops and highlights and all of those things you talk about instead of talking about what you're really thinking about. And I just had this moment where I couldn't take it anymore. And I felt like, why are we even friends? What good are we doing each other when we're just acting all the time? And so when you say a leap of faith, that was sort of the moment for me. I said, I'm just going to sit this girl down and tell her who I am. One of my favorite scriptures has always been, here I am, just here I am. And I used to think it meant I had to volunteer for everything, which I hate. It might still mean that, but I decided it doesn't. To me, it just means, here I am. I'm going to tell you who I really am. And I sat her down, and we were church friends, which sometimes makes things a little bit different, right? And I said, I know that we're church friends, and I want you to know that before I got to church officially in my life, I was the church's worst nightmare. And I told her my story, and I told her about my decades-long struggles with bulimia and my eating disorders and my alcoholism and my college years when I was thrown into drugs and bad love, and I told her about things you're really not supposed to talk about in church, like abortion and jail and all kinds of things that I didn't look like the type of person who had maybe experienced those things. And honestly, after I finished talking, there was the most awkward 5-minute silence during which I actually wanted to run to my minivan and move, which is what I usually do. But then she started crying, and she told me everything about her family, and we were able to just kind of join together this little team of people who helped her and her family. And it was not easy, and it was not pretty, but her family did make it, and she still reads the blog religiously, and that whole experience changed her life. And it changed my life because several days later, my minister called me on the phone and said, "We want you to tell your story to the whole church." And I thought, that girl ratted me out. And to this day, we still don't know how the minister found out. That's been left unfigured out. But I did tell my story to the church, and it was amazing and so freeing, and nobody ran away, and nobody yelled at me, and people cried, and people told me their stories, and I just decided I can do this. This is something I can do. It almost doesn't even require much volunteering. You can sit and do it. It's freeing. I think it might have been the moment where I realized how much God actually does love me. Because sometimes I feel like we're supposed to understand that. I know we're supposed to understand that God loves us no matter what, but sometimes it really takes somebody else loving you no matter what to understand that. And that was a life-changing moment for me, and I just decided that's what I want to do with my life, that telling the truth shamelessly and believing that I'm loved anyway would be a good use of a life.
Why do we crave perfection? Why do you think we crave perfection?
I think we think that if we're perfect, people will love us. And all I know is that I tried to be perfect for a really long time while hiding who I really was. And I didn't have zero good relationships. It was all a fake connection, and I felt so lonely because even though I was liked, I wasn't really liked. So the more people liked this fake me, the more fake I felt like I had to be. And so instead of real connections, there were just, chasm-wide deep separations between the real me and the real other people. And since I never introduced my real self to anyone, nobody ever introduced their real self to me. So the lonely perfection is not real, and anything that's not real is lonely. I don't know. I think we have the wrong idea about what will make us friends and what will make us happy.
How do you decide who to open up to?
Well, I'll tell you what you don't do. You don't do it on the interweb. A lot of people read the interweb, apparently.
No, those initial days, when you said, okay, maybe it's okay for me to tell my story, surely there were those who did give you that, oh, thanks for sharing.
Yeah. But see, all the time.
Yeah.
But it's so helpful.
Or I'm going to pray for you.
All the time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about that right now. But
okay.
I will tell you that does happen, and it makes things simpler, because when I tell the truth and somebody says, oh, bless your heart, or whatever people say, I just know, okay, we're not going to be great friends. It's just a simple, litmus test for, is this person going to get real with me or not? Mm-hmm. And it's usually just that someone's not ready. Mm-hmm. But that's okay. I think about the Christian faith and the posture that is required to live the Christian faith. And it's not this, it's this. There's always an element of leaving yourself open for crucifixion. Mm-hmm. And so when people don't like me, or when people say really mean things, which they do, I kind of feel like maybe it means I'm doing something right.
Let's talk about that. How many, what's happening on Momastery? Tell everyone what Momastery is. And there's something like 60,000 moms that are connected. Tell us about that.
Well, there's a lot of dads who, they just email me secretly. They don't admit it. But
First, for those who don't know, tell us what a blog is.
oh, okay. So a blog is a way of writing. It's just a new way of writing essays. So you get online and you write an essay, and then you press a button that says post, and then it goes out to the whole world. So like my favorite writer, Anne Lamott, said, the great thing about writing is that they can't boo you right away. The blog world has changed that. They can boo you right away now. And so it's amazing because it creates this real, live community, whereas when you're writing a book, that's a whole different experience, and it's beautiful because it's a piece of art that you can work and rework, and you can reread it and change things and make it sound better, but the blog is more raw and real because you do it in real time. And you kind of look back and you just want to die sometimes at what you thought was appropriate to publish. But I think that's one of and I do edit myself a lot. I always, for example, make sure that I don't write about something until I'm coming from a place of love, because it's a serious platform, and we have actually a lot of incredible structure at Momastery, which is that we treat each other the way we want to be treated there, and that we think that unity is great, but diversity is even better. And
how did you pick the title Momastery?
well, I've always had a fascination with monasteries, and I have this incredible desire for connection, but also to constantly retreat. Like, it's like this tension in my life. Like, I want friends, but I don't want to leave my house. Which, vlog. But it's this constant thing. I can't figure out if I'm a social person or a hermit, or so these monks I just became so interested in, because they sort of drop out of the world, but then they create their own little community. They're not all hermits. They drop out to find a quiet place to listen for God and to cut out the noise, but they also work really hard at creating a peaceful community. And that's what I really wanted for myself and for my friends and for women, was a safe place where we could sort of tell the truth and do like the really hard work of making peace with each other. Because, on TV, women are just always treating each other so badly, and that wasn't my experience in real life. And so I just wanted a place where we could sort of retreat, but also congregate and be safe exploring what it might be like to live as our real selves. I was also in the throes of postpartum depression with noise and children just dripping off of me, and I just was really jealous of monks who got to leave.
Right. So what's happened? Tell me some stories of what's happened in your momastery and the people that follow are called monkeys.
Yes.
Right? Not monks, but monkeys.
Because monkeys of the momastery.
How many monkeys do we have here today? Okay.
Woo!
Okay, all right, great.
So we thought about calling ourselves monks because it's a momastery, but we curse and watch trash TV, and it's just, we're a little irreverent to call ourselves monks. So we settled on monkeys. And what happens there is we all are our best selves. And I think our best selves are our real selves, with love. I think that's the key. I'm not my best self in every aspect of my life, at all. But momastery is where I practice my best self, and it does trickle out to other places. What happens there is that I write my real stories, and then the most beautiful part of what happens there is that other women write their real stories to me. And so what the monkeys don't see is that half a day, every day, I'm reading stories from women. And it reminds me so much of of Moses when he said, God, let me see you. Because it's really what I do in my writing, and my reading even more. Because I feel like writing is sort of like talking, and reading is like listening. So the reading is always more important to me. I just say, let me see you. And I read these women's stories, and just the pain and the triumph and the horrors that people face and how they overcome them is so beautiful that it reminds me of when God says, you can't see me. It's too bright. You'll die. I'm too beautiful. And that's how it feels to me. That's how I experience it. But he says, I'll show you where I've just been. That's what I'll do. And that's what I see in these stories. It's so hard to see it in our own lives, right? You can see another woman and see how beautiful she is and see how far she's come. And then you think, I wish I was like her. We're all like her. But I get to see where God has been with this woman in her walk, and where he's carried her, and where he's dragged her kicking and screaming, and where he's wept with her. And it's just so beautiful. And I pray that that's what other people experience at Monastery. That's the gift that it is for me.
And it seems like there are these other gifts. I mean, you all really take care of each other in the sense that when you hear about, I've heard some stories about when you hear about someone struggling with cancer, there's a philanthropic element to it. Say something about that.
There is a philanthropic, a big philanthropic part of Monastery, which is called Monkey See, Monkey Do, which just means we see needs in our community and we do something about them. But the important part of Monkey See, Monkey Do is that that's all been completely organic. We never set out to do that at all. The last thing I ever wanted to do was tell a bunch of women that they needed to do something else. I was not going to be a part of that at all. But what we've seen happen is what is sort of on a bigger level what happened in my own life, which is when you are loved well, when you are filled up, or more specifically, when you just admit how loved you've always been, it just overflows. I mean, you cannot stop it. We cannot stop it. Sometimes I am too tired for a love flash mob. I'm too tired. It doesn't matter. They are coming. And they are throwing money at these women who need it and they've never met.
Yeah, so tell a story. Give an example of, was there a van?
Yeah, this woman, a monkey, was suffering from ALS, and she didn't have enough money to leave her house because she didn't have an equipped van. And so somehow we decided she needs a van, and then somebody else needed a van. So we were like, what's better than one van? Two vans. So we told the monkeys, we have a rule that nobody is allowed to donate more than $25 because we call them love flash mobs. And the important part of them to me is not actually the receivers of the gifts. It's the thousands of people who get to give and see how that feels and see how empowering it is and see that you don't have to give thousands of dollars to make a difference. So for these vans, we raised $80,000 in, I think, 40 hours just with $25 donations. And I was watching them all come in, of course, like this. I don't do anything for 2 days during Flash Mob. I just watch the thing. And, I mean, little notes would come in that say, this is $5 from my son. Or this is the $6 I was saving for this. Or so many of these are $1, $2. And it's not about the money. It's just about, I can do this. Giving is not just for rich people. Giving is for all of us. And there's plenty of people who are part of the flash mobs and don't have the money, but just cheer. And that's as exciting as the giving. It's natural. It's a natural overflow of being loved and accepted, I think.
Do you see this, that I'm sitting next to the Mother Superior of a monastery with 60,000 women who pray, listen, and to support each other, and then they go and do things for other people? I mean, is that church? I mean, that's, yeah, and and it says something really important that that regardless of who you are, there you are, and we're all craving connection and hope and love and to be a part of something. I want to ask you. I want to go to some of your posts now, if that would be okay. One of the posts that really spoke to me were Holy Holes, where you talked about the experience of coming to faith. And tell us about Holy Holes. What were you saying there?
Well, a lot of my favorite writers talk about this hole that we're born with, this God-sized hole that we try to fill up with all of these other things, probably forever. But I experienced that sort of hole in my life, which I think I can just identify now as sort of a loneliness, that even though I've always been surrounded by people who love me, I've still always felt kind of lonely. And I don't know what that is. But because of that, and because I experienced the world as pretty unsafe, I felt like the world is a pretty unsafe place, which on the surface it is. I hid for a very long time, and I found a great place to hide when I was really young, which was bulimia. And I had my own little world, and it had its own ups and downs and highs and lows. And I was able to live in there, in that world of bulimia, which I could hide in and never have to risk all of those human things like real connection or love or vulnerability. And that worked well until it didn't, of course. And so then I went to college and tried to fill that hole with all kinds of other things. And you know it's a bad hole filler when you end up more empty and sad and lonely after than you did before.
You said you hated the sun.
Oh, the sun. So judgmental, that sun. I really experienced the sun as judgmental because I didn't really have days. I only had nights. I was a raging alcoholic and a drug user, and I was really, really lost. But I was lost inside of a group where it was kind of okay to be lost. So there was a level, and I always looked nice. So there was a level of acceptance there. You know, she's a mess, but she's a cute one. So the sun, the worst moments of my life were the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning, where I would still be up, and I would start to see the sun come up. And it was just excruciating because I knew that everybody else was going to start their day, that they had things to do during the day, that they were making connections and exploring their passions and, having friendships. And I didn't have any of that. And I had lost my relationship with my family, and I couldn't even talk to my best friend, who's my sister, because when people call you, they say, "How are you?" And I had no idea how to answer that question. But the sun kept coming up every single day. And I feel like, to me, that's how God's love is. It's not there to be judgmental. It's just outside waiting. And it will keep coming back, even if you don't want it to. It will keep coming back and just wait there to light you up and to warm you. And when you get there, no matter how long you've been hiding in the dark, it won't be mad at you. It'll just keep shining. And I love the sun now. I moved to Florida.
But the journey of faith for you, it's been a very interesting one, because we talked about how for many people, you've moved through, you're living in recovery now, and how there is this perspective out there that says, I find God, and God completely fills that hole. And what you've said is, God has filled a lot of the hole, but you still have a hole in your heart.
Yes. I know that there are a lot of people who say that they find God, and everything is fabulous for the rest of their lives. And I'm not mad at them anymore, but I don't invite them over.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Because it is, what do you do? What do you do when you give yourself to God and all of a sudden the next day you kind of have a bad day, right?
I'll tell you. Well,
yeah,
I know there's a lot of people who only need Jesus, and I need Jesus and Lexapro and Twizzlers and Diet Coke and lots of coffee and cute stockings and I need a lot of things. And I think that God has always loved me the same. I don't have a great come to Jesus moment. Even when I was mad at the sun, and even in my worst days, I've known that God was there. I know that my faith is that every shred of evidence to the contrary, all is well. And I guess I would say that the change came not when I found God. I never really understand what that means. But there was a time when I started, and I think it was on my bathroom floor. One of my favorite writers says, they say God is in the details, but I actually think he's in the bathroom. God always shows up on my bathroom floor. But I think I just finally believed how much I'm loved, just as I am. So that might be it, when I finally caved to that, when I finally surrendered to that, whatever it's called, when I just accepted the fact that with all of my craziness and all of my brokenness, that I am crazy loved. And after I accepted that, I was still uncomfortable on this earth. And I was still lonely and had all kinds of discomfort, and I was still desperate for meaning. It didn't all just get fixed. And so I had to think, why, if I am so loved, why would this God who loves me so much leave me with these uncomfortable feelings? Because that's the question, right? If we're loved so much and he leaves us with these things that he could take away, what are they for? And so what I've decided that they're for is that we're lonely because we're supposed to be a little bit lonely. Because if we weren't a little bit lonely, we wouldn't work so hard to build these bridges to other people. And if we weren't a little bit uncomfortable, we wouldn't work so hard to create art. We wouldn't write, we wouldn't read, we wouldn't paint, we wouldn't dance. We wouldn't do those things that help us just become a little bit more comfortable on this earth. And if we didn't suffer, we wouldn't work so hard to help other people out of their suffering. If we didn't know how it felt to hurt, we wouldn't care to reach out to lift other people up. So I think the problem is not the problem. The problem is not that we have to fix this discomfort or that we're lacking something, and that's why we feel this discomfort, or that life is hard because I'm doing something wrong. I think life is hard because it's supposed to be hard, because we're supposed to find ways to make it better for ourselves and each other.
Amen to that. The core, again, the core issue is not whether God is good and all loving and perfect. God is. The reality is, however, we're not. And God's still going to be working in our lives for the rest of our lives. And I think one of the things that you have given us the courage to do is to embrace that and to accept that. And there'll be good days and there'll be bad days, but God still loves us, and we need to learn to love each other. Another post that you had where you talked about not every moment can be a perfect moment. Was don't carpe diem me? Is that it?
Yeah.
Would you tell that story?
Well, one of the other gifts that writing has offered me is when I have a feeling, a general feeling about something that other people aren't talking about, I can almost guarantee now that there's thousands of other women that have had that feeling or are currently having that feeling and want to talk about it. And so I will tell you, I have 3 young children, and we'll do the thing where we say, and I love them with all my heart. You know, we all love our children, right? But I kept noticing this phenomenon that would happen. That every time I went anywhere, someone would stop me with my 3 little rugrats following me and say, "Oh, I hope you're enjoying every minute of this. It goes by so fast." I mean, this happened for 3 years, and before I just admitted that makes me crazy and mad. And no, it's not going by fast. This hour has lasted 17 years. And it's always in Target when they're rolling around on the floor, and I'm just still in my sweatpants. I forgot to get dressed, and they're behaving horribly. And I look at it. It was always people who weren't in the throes of it, by the way. No 30-year-old ever said that to me. I'll just say that. And I thought maybe what they mean, because I don't love writing. I don't. I love having written. And so I thought, maybe they mean they love having parented. Because I really do love that moment at the end of the day when I'm on my couch and everyone's finally in bed after 2 hours of whack-a-mole. And we actually do pull out pictures. If you really want to love your kids, just look at pictures of them, okay? Not the actual them, the pictures of them. And finally, I figured out why that made me crazy, and I said, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it because I think it's fair. I think it's fair to say it because, my husband is in software sales, and it's a hard job in this economy, and he comes home and he talks about how hard it is sometimes, and I never say to him, well, I hope you are enjoying every moment of this fiscal year. Mm-hmm. Because, Craig, this fiscal year, it flies by. And so you grab on and smile while you're at it. And the way that we tend to do this like either or in mommy land. It's like either you're a perfect mom or you're a slacker mom. Either you're an organic mom or you're a McDonald's mom. Either, it's not true. It's not true. We're all and both. I'm an amazing mom until 8:30 a.m. when everyone wakes up. Aren't you? You wake up and you're like, oh, look at my house. This is so peaceful. And then they come out. They come out like the sun every morning. But there are these moments, right? It's what it is. It's like climbing Mount Everest. Like it's so painful. You just like cry the whole way up. But then you have these moments where I've never climbed Mount Everest. I don't even like to climb stairs, but I've read that, there are these views, right, that are so breathtaking that it just makes all of the sweating and crying worth it. And that's, to me, what parenting is. I mean, honestly, 90% of it, I am a writer, and words are important to me. And enjoyable is not the right word. Enjoy is not the right word. There are the moments, though, and I think of them in terms of God words, where there's chronos time, which is sort of the time we all live in, where it's like, 10 minutes till Dad gets home, and this Target line is so long, and, those kinds of excruciating moments. And then there's those kairos moments. And kairos is God's time. It's like time outside of time. And there are those moments where you look at your child and you think, you are a miracle. "You are so beautiful, I can hardly stand this." Or when you're out with your family and you're like, "I am such a grown-up. I made a family." It's like, I am an upstanding citizen. I made a family. It's just when you really can see the miracle that children are. And honestly, I have a couple of moments of that a day, and that's enough for me. I don't have to enjoy every moment. Motherhood is a relationship, but it's also a really hard job. And nobody enjoys their job all the time.
You use the word brutiful.
Right. Yeah.
What is brutiful?
Brutiful is how I describe life, because I feel like life is so beautiful that I can hardly look it in the eye sometimes. And I also feel like it is so brutal that I can hardly look it in the eye sometimes. And it's and both all the time. I rarely have a moment where it's one or the other. And my family's going through a pretty hard time right now, and I have a 10-year-old, and I walked into his bedroom the other day, and I said, "Honey, how are you feeling?" And he said, "I'm a little sad. I'm a little happy. I'm sappy." Yes. He gets it.
Well, it's exciting to me to think about, defrosting Christchurch and defrosting Charlotte with authentic people that can answer the question, "How are you?" and create places where there can be connection and storytelling and genuine love. I think that's is the goal self-disclosure? I don't know if the goal, we talked about that last night. I don't know if the goal is self-disclosure. So much of it is, it's love, isn't it? But until we find the courage, our friend Brene talks about it as ordinary courage, until we find the courage to tell our stories in the safe places to tell our stories, there is a risk that we may never know that love, that grace, that healing. And what greater thing can we offer this community, our families, our neighborhoods, our workplaces, the genuine people who believe in the depth and love of God and are okay with you not being perfect and love you anyway. You talk about, is it becoming hostresses? What is, we've got it, what,
Yeah.
did I get that right? This whole thing is kind of awkward for me.
It's the words and the mixing.
You know what I'm saying? So I just,
I can't autocorrect. It kills me. I'm like, that's what I meant. I make up words.
Yeah.
Okay, hostess. So I am a person who invites 60,000 people into my life every day. When someone knocks on my door, I have been known to hide in the bathroom until they leave. I get so terrified when people come to my house because it's just messy and there's the dirt and there's like dirt in the silverware tray, and there's just, I don't know what people eat. I have no idea what people eat, so, I don't know what to put out. I know this is awful. I'm like in a southern town. I should not admit that. I don't have the things that people need, like the trays, and, it's just, I can't do it. So it's like I can virtually invite people into my life, but the real thing is completely terrifying to me. And so I decided to deal with that because, there are some things that we're just supposed to do, right? I can't just say I'm not good at hostessing, so I'm never going to have anyone over to my house because, there are things like walking and fresh air and letting people into your home that you're just supposed to do, whether you like them or not, right? So I decided to have people over, my best friends, really. I decided to have them over to my house. And in preparation for this, instead of trying to learn how to cook, because that was not going to happen, I started thinking a lot about what hostessing probably is. And I thought a lot about the story with Jesus and Mary and Martha. Mary and Martha were sisters or friends? Same thing.
That's right. I'm good with that.
So Jesus came to their house, and Martha was freaking out in the kitchen. I mean, can you imagine? Like, talk about a host stress. Jesus is here! Is he gluten-free? And she was, finding her pots or whatever people do, and she looked at her sister, Mary, and Mary was just sitting at Jesus' feet, listening to everything he had to say, just soaking him in. And Mary and Martha got so mad, and I love this. She told on her sister. She called Jesus in and said, "Look at her, she's just sitting, and I have so much to do, and look at her." And he said, Mary has chosen the better part, and it's not going to be taken from her. And I was thinking, what? Because I'm always trying to, don't we all? I mean, I'm trying to fit what Jesus said to make myself acceptable. And so what I decided that he meant was...
Excuse me.
And I don't want to know better, so don't fix me on this. Is that maybe the better part of hostessing people, and I don't just mean in your home, I mean just allowing people in, is not all the trappings of food and plates and couches and clean silverware drawers and nice things to say, but is just sitting at the feet of the person who you're encountering and seeing them as an invitation to know more about God and the world and eventually yourself. And when people come to my house, I always sit on the floor now. It just makes me feel good. And I tell people to bring their own food. Also, bring your own cups. I mean, you have to have red wine cups, white wine cups, and also, I don't know what the dishwasher does in my house, but it doesn't clean things. Because every time I take a glass out, there's all those rings, and then I think I'll just give you bottled water, but then what if they're like an environmentalist? It's like the cup situation is out of control. So that's what I do. I say, bring your own cup, bring your drink. At 9 o'clock, I'll say, it's okay, stay. Don't stay, go, I'm tired. I always say that. And then people come and I just sit at their feet, and I can do it now. So I have no more host stress. I'm just a hostess.
And this is an art with our crazy, busy world that's sort of dying, isn't it?
Yeah.
What does it mean for us as a church to practice hospitality without the performance anxiety? What does it mean for us to create spaces one-on-one or with 4 or 5 people without an agenda? And think about what would happen this week if we had a party. That kind of party, a Mary and Martha party, where we just created a place for people to tell their stories and to be known and to be loved. It's not very high technology, is it? Probably wouldn't cost a lot, but it could be life-saving. One more thing, there will be dancing. What did you mean when you wrote that? There will be dancing.
So There Will Be Dancing was an essay on the blog that turned into the final essay in my book. And, in my life right now, there's a lot that has gone well and a lot that continues to appear not to go well. But we know that every shred of evidence to the contrary, all is well. However, there just seems to be all kinds of loose ends right now. And when I think about those loose ends, I sort of think of God kind of knitting our lives. And the knitting looks like it has no pattern at first. It's all kinds of swirly and confusing. But I think of looking at what's already been knitted in my life, and I do kind of see a pattern. And it's not, I was lost and now I'm saved. It's not that. It's like every single day, I was lost and I'm saved and I'm lost and I'm saved. Lost, saved, lost, saved, lost, saved. But I do feel like I'm always carried. And so I also know that I have no control. I have no control over the big things that happen in my life. And so that's sort of a blessing, because I think that God, while God is knitting, is completely in control. And I think that God always wants the highest and best for me. And so if we have someone that's always in control, it kind of frees us up, right? It frees us up to do all of the things that God probably wants us to do instead of fighting so hard for control we don't have. And for me, I think of that as dancing, which is funny because for so long I didn't dance unless I had had 17 glasses of Chardonnay, which does not make a girl a good dancer, but it makes a girl think she's a good dancer. Mm-hmm. And one of the most important spiritual nights of my life was at a cousin's wedding when I was dead sober, and I hate weddings, sober. And I watched all of my cousins on the dance floor, and I thought, I want to do that. I want to do that. Even if I'm sober, and even if I suck, I just want that freeing feeling. And so I got up on the dance floor and danced. And I think it might have been the best night of my life. I really do. There were all kinds of awkward moments, where you find yourself outside of the circle and you're like, oh my God, and you're trying to work your way back in, and sober, oh, and chewing gum always makes you feel like you're doing something, like you're too busy to be in the group because you're chewing gum. I'm telling you, it works. But I eventually made myself back into those groups, and I always dance at weddings now. And I just think that at the end of our lives, when we realize how much we were loved and how safe we actually were, that's what we're going to wish we had done more of.
Awesome. One thing about showing up, that's something that really struck me. And that was that you said, I don't know where I'm going, the Thomas Merton line, but I'm going to do my best just to keep showing up. Mm-hmm. What does that mean for you? And how would you encourage us in a world where there's uncertainty, where we're dealing with all kinds of things and believing that we're loved? What does it mean for us just to show up?
Well, showing up is the hardest thing on earth, I think. That's what I was doing for 20 years, is not showing up, hiding. It's terrifying to show up. We want to choose how we get to show up. When I started writing, I didn't want to write. I had just lost my third adoption. I wanted to do something huge for God. I did not want to sit in my playroom and write down stories about my kids. I didn't want to do it. but I felt the nagging, that when it's the nagging, it's always God that won't go away, the little nagging, that's what I was supposed to do, and I ignored it. And then my sister came home one day and said, we were both searching for what we were supposed to do next. We were having that desperate for meaning feeling. And she said, I believe that God wants me to go to Rwanda and save little girls from child sex trade. And I thought, well, Jesus, I'm going to start writing then, because I do not want that call.
Yeah.
And so that day I said, bring me a laptop, bring me a laptop, bring me a laptop, bring me a laptop. And she did go to Rwanda, and that is how I showed up. That's the best I could do at the time. I certainly wasn't going to go out in the world yet. And it seemed so boring and so inconsequential, just writing your little words to go out into the interweb where you didn't even know if anyone was reading them. I mean, I remember when I had 40 followers, and I yelled down to Craig, how many followers disciples did Jesus have? And he said 12, and I said, I have 44. And he said, don't write that.
Yeah.
And it was so hard to get. I have neurological Lyme disease, and I was so tired, and I didn't want to keep showing up, but I knew that's all I could do. And at the end of the day, I would feel good that I had shown up for myself. And I used to picture Jesus on the couch like this, waiting for me while I laid in bed, and that helped a little bit. Now, here's the thing about writing. If you keep writing, and people like it, people invite you to talk, as if the two things are related. As if, because you're a writer, you're going to be a great speaker, which sort of would be like, if you're great at pottery, well, you must be a great deep-sea fisherman. It's not completely related at all. So, but then I started getting invited to these sorts of things, and that's when it got terrifying, because that's hard and scary. The showing up to my computer was just hard. And so I always feel like in order to show up, there has to be a little bit of mixture of faith and sweat. There has to be a little bit of preparation that goes into it, whether that's just a moment of quiet before you walk into a coffee with a friend. There has to be a moment that you prepare to be present. And that's the sweat part, right? And then there's just the element of faith. It's just, I always think that the two most repeated phrases in the Bible are remember and do not be afraid. And the way I can not be afraid is to remember all of the times that I've shown up and God's met me there. And I just assume that since he's always done it before, he's always going to do it. And I also think it's okay not to show up sometimes. We can't be perfect. So it's like the sun. When we decide not to show up, it's okay. There's going to be another opportunity.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And what I'm going to pray, and I want you to pray with me because you're the Mother Superior of a monastery.
God help us all.
All right. And what I'm going to pray is that God will give us the capacity, every single person here, to show up when we can, as often as we can, to tell our stories and to create places where other people can tell their stories and receive love and grace. And that from this group, we talked about this last night, it will go out and touch 100,000 lives. That we will create places of love and hope and grace as the body of Christ. So will you pray with me?
I will. Out loud?
No.
Are you asking me to show up? Because I feel like I already did.
It's going to be a short one.
Okay.
Okay. And do you want me to say the prayer?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Gracious God, we thank you that you have loved us. Help us to hear the voice of your love. And help us to open our arms to each other so that more and more people can know the gift of acceptance. And help us, Lord, to realize that all of us are on a journey to healing. Help us to trust you in that journey. And help us, Lord, along the way to dance. To dance and know that all things will be well. All manner of things will be well in your time. Amen. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
That was awesome.